Hello ladies and gents, this is Tennyson Stead, the writer and director and producer of Quantum Theory on the 8-Sided blog. And I'm here going to talk about today one of the other projects that I'm working on with the 8-Sided ensemble, which is a series of video blogs I'm doing with actor Gerard Marzilli called Smoking Hollywood. And Smoking Hollywood is the set of instructional and informational blogs produced by a fictional filmmaker that Gerard and I and the rest of the ensemble have sort of been developing as a character for several years, whose name is David Allen Rifkin. Actually, if anybody's familiar with my own blog, the Developmental Breakdown, there's a couple of articles in there about David Allen Rifkin. And the genesis of Rifkin took place probably about 2 or 2.5 years ago, a little bit longer actually, on a night when I was cooking in the kitchen. It had been a very long day. I was lamenting my station in Hollywood, and I was mentally remarking on the possibility of coming up through the ranks of filmmakers in the time when I was in college, and folks like Quentin Tarantino and Jim Jarmusch were producing movies for the first time in their careers, and where Sundance was a powerful force in the industry in terms of letting new voices in film get discovered, and independent film was blooming. Foreign sales hadn't quite taken a grip on the creative process in this town the way that it has today, and a lot more risk was being taken overall. And I was sort of painting a picture in my head of the kinds of films that were getting produced and the kinds of films I could have been producing in that particular time and what that would have meant to me creatively. And I stopped for a moment and I realized, and anybody who spent a lot of time in video stores at that particular moment, particularly video stores with a lot of independent cinema, might understand exactly what I'm saying here, but there was a very specific kind of comedy, largely influenced by Kevin Smith, that was getting produced at the time. And it occurred to me how unlikely it was that there was not a movie on video store shelves in 1996 or 1997, very specifically called Pizza Man, which starred maybe David Schwimmer or one of the other cast members of Friends and half the cast of Reservoir Dogs, about the quirky adventures of a pizza man on the streets of New York who gets stuck with a bunch of delivery jobs and winds up getting sucked through the pizza deliveries into an underworld of sex and crime and all these things that he wants no part of. He just wants to deliver his pizzas and get home and go on with his life. And of course, the problem with movies like this is that they almost never have any personal stakes. The character is almost always very passive. But they were very popular at that particular moment in time because Hollywood was realizing that people respond to quirky content. And, I had this, he delivers the pizza, and turns out he's delivering it to a crime boss played by Harvey Keitel, and Harvey Keitel doesn't like the pizza, or maybe he's got someone strung up in the next room and he hears the screams and he brings in the pizza man, and before long there's some kind of BDSM thing going on just because we have to make sure that we cover, the leather scene in this movie for whatever reason, and it just descends into what the filmmaker hopes will be received as mad delight, and probably it'll just be boring and frustrating. So that thought occurred to me right as Gerard was coming into the apartment, and I called his attention to it and said, "Gerard, it's amazing that we somehow didn't wind up having to watch this movie again and again and again with our friends in college." And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "It is so unlikely that I'm willing to bet you that it happened, that there is a movie called Pizza Man. And this director, who's got one of those 3 names, David Allen Rifkin's his name, he went on to get sucked into a bunch of M. Night Shyamalan-esque twist-ending knockoff movies, trying to capture that success before he eventually found his creative stride with a CGI-intensive Critters remake around the year of 2003. Maybe as a financial response to the success of Kangaroo Jack, and went on from there to become known in Hollywood as the remake and franchise revival guy. And then we got in the future that is today and onwards so frustrated with this man's repulsive dreck that we sent Terminators back to kill him. And so that's why Pizza Man isn't on video store shelves. It has nothing to do with the fact that it didn't get made. It absolutely did. We fixed it. So, David Allen Rifkin's sort of been our ideological punching bag in 8-sided films. One of the ethics that we promote here in the company is the support of our creative community. And regardless of what conversations we may have about individual films or individual filmmakers, within our own walls and within our own community, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go and say things, for example, on a video blog that would keep people from buying tickets to movies that they're excited about. If we don't like a filmmaker's work, but the audience does, there's no sense whatsoever in telling the audience that they're wrong. You should allow them to enjoy movies in whatever way that they can, and you should allow the filmmakers that deliver those movies to them to have that connection and have that relationship on whatever terms they can, because just because we don't understand or relate to that filmmaker's relationship with his or her audience doesn't make it invalid. And it certainly doesn't make anyone wrong for liking those movies, either the filmmaker or the audience. And one thing I've learned from experience is that you can never, ever guess at whether or not a filmmaker's intentions are inherently cynical or financially based until you've actually met them. There's no telling. The filmmakers that you may think are obviously just sellouts and jerks might be some of the most passionate people you've ever met and might have very specific reasons for loving the things that they do about their movies and the people that they work with. And that's a mistake that I've made in my own career that frankly has caused me a great deal of shame because I learned what a jackass I was being, and I don't ever want to relearn that lesson. So we don't talk about other people's movies unless it's in a positive light in public, because there's no need to. It's not supportive of the community. There are plenty of film critics out there that will, I'm sure, find exactly the thoughts that I have and express them just as eloquently as I could. I'm not offering anything to the community by taking a part of the people's work. However, and this is where David Allen Rifkin comes in, there are lots of habits that we have in the community altogether that I do think are very counterproductive. And I think bringing those to light without necessarily bringing up specific examples is something we can all learn from. I think that we have the opportunity to use our collective experience to improve our habit base, the work that we do. So, David Allen Rifkin's career makes a very convenient place to look for opportunities to criticize. And he's someone that I can place all the habits that I find frustrating and distasteful and counterproductive and use him as sort of a dummy to hold up and say, look, this is what doesn't work and this is why it doesn't work, and can you see how, these things that maybe we've all done to some degree, and some of us more than others, how maybe they're not helping the audience connect with us, and how maybe they're not helping our own financial sustainability, and how they're not helping us grow creatively. Can you see how they're not helping us build the community that makes the entertainment industry strong, and can you see how they're hurting our craft? That's what Smoking Hollywood is. So Gerard and I have been playing with David long enough that I think Gerard's got a very clear sense of who this character is, and what I'm doing is I'm writing up some vlogs for him to do as satire. So David Allen Rifkin, the responsible party for so much of Hollywood's creative stagnation and formulaic thinking and all these kinds of problems that we have in this industry, is going to be teaching young up-and-coming filmmakers how to make movies and how to make Hollywood work for them, and in doing so will expose his preconceived prejudices and notions of counterproductivity. That's basically what the blog is. And I don't know if it's going to be funny or just sickening. I really don't. I think Gerard and I are definitely on the same page in terms of what we want to do with it, and we just finished running around and doing our costume work for David Allen Rifkin, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But the character's really coming together, and I think it's going to be animated enough and serious enough and also ridiculous and obscene enough to get some laughs. So I like any good satire. We're riding a line here. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but we'll do maybe 8 or 9 or 10 episodes, see where we stand and see what people make of it, and take it from there. That is what's up with David Allen Rifkin and Smoking Hollywood. And I thank you for listening, and I will do another blog forthwith. And in the meantime, have a great evening. This is Tennyson Stead signing out.